taken miniature painting. This is mine. I painted this by hand, and you have to paint all the miniatures. This is a geisha who's the camera's not doing a good job.
Yeah.
But her head is exploding out, and the spinal column has turned into like a serpent's head, so she's like a vampire.
Mary had a little lamb, but I ate it!
Everyone's just boofing up.
Do it! Just do it!
Hey guys, welcome to the Bitter Endgame Draft featuring me, the Endgame investor, and Phil of the Bitter Draft. This was actually the second most popular video of my last 10, our last episode. Phil, you should know that people are starting to get a liking for it or getting a taste for blood. If what we deliver is blood, then they have a taste for it. And if it's something else, then they have a taste for that. It's just blood is the first thing that came into my mind. I don't know. I'm a bloody guy. What can you say? I should probably stop talking at this point. I just got back from a long trip to try to get away from some rockets, and there was some peace, and then we come home and there's some more explosions.
Venting prevents explosion. Ooh, this is hard. Where's my tab?
Not directly. No, my house shook a little bit, but it's in Safed Sva, which is like about maybe 25 miles away, but they're pretty big, and they're in the atmosphere, so it kind of like spreads out. Anyway, I'm fine. And Phil, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Rafi. Doing well. My channel's doing very well as well. It's a as I myself describe it, it is a complementary piece to yours, or a supplementary piece. The complementary is supplementary, it doesn't matter. It matters in economic terms.
Well, there is a big difference between a compository and a suppository, but here it's not much of a difference.
I will say it's a complementary piece.
Okay.
My channel is the Bitter Draft on Rumble, mostly Rumble. I am on YouTube, but I prefer everyone to interact with me on Rumble just because of free speech issues. I don't want to deal with YouTube for as much as possible. And my channel is dedicated to providing the theories underlying the reason why Rafi is correct in his assessments. We're both not ideologically, we're both aligned according to the philosophies of Mises and Rothbard. So I am just providing the underlying frameworks to help to explain to normal people why Rafi is correct in his assessments.
All right, so I'll be pinning a comment on the top here, or Phil will make a comment and I'll pin it, giving you a link to his channel on Rumble. And yeah, it brings me down to earth in terms of what I'm saying to give real world examples of it. And I highly recommend you watch his episodes. Comes up once every week, once every 2 weeks, something like that. And they're pretty good.
I shoot for once a week.
Yeah, okay.
I don't always make it, but I shoot for once a week.
All right, keep shooting from the hip. The first thing we're going to be dealing with is why strikes are a symptom of inflation and not a cause of it. And by inflation, when people say that they're a symptom of inflation, they're a cause of inflation, they mean rising prices. But what we mean when we say inflation is inflation of the gold derivative supply over the actual money supply, to be exact.
Sure. So I ran into a CNBC. This is back during the port strike that happened and was quickly resolved. The port owners handled it about as I thought they would, which was to give in to demands immediately because they probably recognized that inflation is going to devalue whatever these people are demanding, and they'll all be working for near free again quite soon.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt you right in the beginning here, but you don't have to address this directly now, but like put it in terms of your answer of how you're gonna address this question generally. But yeah, like you can tell that that price increases, or we're getting closer and closer to the crack up boom because employers give into their striking employees or unions faster and faster because they see that the prices are rising faster and faster, and so their price increases or their wage increases that they're forced to give will be less and less painful to them because prices are rising so fast anyway that it doesn't matter. And so you have like a chicken and egg thing where things keep spinning faster and faster, and the strikes and giving into the strikes is part of it.
Yes. I will work that in. I'll work that in. So I read a CNBC article that said the wage workers, when the strike first broke out, they said this could reignite inflation. And I said, that's preposterous. It's not going to reignite inflation. Inflation is a monetary phenomenon, as we know. But why would CNBC say that? And why would the average person interpret that explanation as a reignition of inflation? And the colloquial understanding is, oh, they're going to demand more wages, and that's going to make the goods coming into port more expensive, so that people must, the people selling the goods have to raise their prices because they had to pay more in dollars to get those goods in.
Yeah, that's all Marxist, but yeah.
Yeah. I understand, but I'm just going by what CNBC is saying. And the fundamental problem is there's two definitions of inflation. There's a correct one and a wrong one. The incorrect definition of inflation is the one that 99% of humanity understands it as, which is a generalized increase in prices over a broad spectrum of goods. The correct understanding of inflation is printing notes for money you don't have. So if you print notes for money you don't have, there's more notes for money floating around, and that causes the boom bust cycle. Now, there is, I'm going off on a slight tangent here. If the actual money supply increases substantially, if a golden meteor lands or if people dig up a bunch of gold in a gold rush, prices also increase. However, that does not cause a boom bust cycle. Only an unnatural increase of credit over the increase of the money supply is what causes the boom bust cycle that we know of as inflation and then a deflationary crash or a crack of boom. So the strikers are demanding more wages, and the reason they're demanding more wages is because their cost of living has gone up, and this is known. And so they demand more wages, and then the prices go up. The prices of things they're selling or they're importing in go up because of their increasing the cost of bringing the goods in, and that's known as the wage price spiral. And it starts to spiral out of control. And what Keynesians think they can do is, if they can stop that, if they can cut that part off, they can keep the prices of goods and services low by screwing over the working man. They can stop what they know of as inflation. And that's not true. What is happening, the way I think of it, is that people, and a user actually corrected me. I did not use precise language, and I should have on my show. A viewer corrected me on this. So what I said was, if the newly printed credit that the Fed and private banks are generating goes into the investment side of the economy, goes into investment opportunities, then inflation as we know it actually does not increase, because everyone's just boofing up.
Do it! Just do it!
Beefing up their portfolios, right? They're investing in the Bitcoin, they're investing in the tech stocks, they're investing in whatever else not. And the illusion of prosperity is being created.
They have an idea, they see a number in their portfolios and they're like, oh, I can get XYZ real stuff with this. But then once everyone tries to cash out and get real stuff at the same time, they can't get any more than they thought that they could get before the boom actually happened.
Right, exactly. It's a complete illusion of prosperity. But what I said was, when the money moves into investments, he corrected me, and he is absolutely correct. I can't remember his name, but he's absolutely correct. The money doesn't just stay there, right? So when I buy a Bitcoin, I give cash to the seller, I give credit to the seller, he gives me the Bitcoin, I now hold the Bitcoin, he now has the cash, and he goes and spends it. But the way to conceptually think of it, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, the way I'm conceptually think of it is, there's really two monetary tornadoes. So if you think of just dollar bills, spinning around a tornado, there's the investment tornado where the money's moving around, and then there's the consumption tornado of buying real goods and services. And you could think of like maybe dollars on the ground that have fallen out of the tornadoes as dollars in your bank account, not doing anything. They're just sitting there, right?
Okay, I gotta put a Twister meme in here when they're in the middle.
I was gonna say, I'm sure you'll find a good meme. Okay. So as long as the investment tornado is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and people are just playing the roulette tables of investment, then this tornado, the price tornado, which is what most people see when they see inflation, doesn't really change that much. But when there are dollar streams, moving between the two tornadoes, and when this one gets, bigger and bigger and bigger, that's when people get upset and they say, "Oh, this is inflationary." But the worker strike is not causing inflation. What the worker strike is doing conceptually, if you want to think of it this way, is it's moving bills from here over to here and causing people to have to, for example, in the real world, you would have to say, "Oh, meat is more expensive now. I have to sell some of my crypto to afford the meat." So you sell the crypto, that tornado gets smaller, and it moves over to this one, buying more meat. Right? That is what's happening in the real world. The Keynesians are trying to sever that link or not allow stuff to move into this tornado. It's impossible to deny forever. There were tricks that they were doing for a long time to get everyone to build just this tornado to just gobsmackingly large. It's a finger of God sized tornado. And when it moves over to here, that's when the all hell breaks loose.
Well, ironically, the term "finger of God" it describes the smallest of the 10 plagues, which is lice. So what the Egyptians were complaining about is that this is the finger of God. It was the first plague that they couldn't replicate. They were able to do blood with a sleight of hand. They were able to do frogs. They couldn't do lice because it was too small. They couldn't do the magic trick. And they said, "Etzba Elohim," it's finger of God. Too small, can't do it.
Written with the finger of God.
How ironic.
Okay. So yeah, you could use, I mean, it's big, it's small, it's not really, there's no finger of God. It's all poetry.
Yeah. I want to finish with what you said. So
okay.
The factory, I said, if I was the factory owners, I would give into this immediately. Whatever they want, I don't care. If these guys are out there we want more paper. Sure, have all the paper you want. Because in matter of month, they wanted a 75% increase in wages. The one thing I would have fought on was they're Luddites. They want to stop the technological innovations, because if you look at ports in Asia, it's like robots doing almost everything, and there's a few guys with computers now. So they want to keep it more manual. That's Luddite. That's stupid. I would fight on that. But as far as the money they want, sure, the currency they want, sure, have as much as you want, buddy. They wanted a 75% raise over 6 years. Absolutely no fight from me whatsoever. In 6 months, you're going to be fighting for 125% raise over 2 years. And then it's just going to get more and more and more, severe over that, until finally they say, we are not going to work for this paper. And then the port shuts down until something like silver enters the economy and people can be paid for their actual honest work again.
Yeah. So I guess in the way I would put it, in the way that my brain structures these things, is that what's happening with a port strike is that faith in the dollar. The dollar's purchasing power. Well, you can describe that as faith in the dollar. I don't know exactly how you describe it, but it's getting lower and lower, and these workers, because of inflation, are able to purchase less and less with their wages, and therefore they demand higher wages because of the inflation, and because of the loss of purchasing power that is caused by the inflation of the money supply. And so that in turn can theoretically cause prices to rise even further, but only indirectly, not in a Marxist way, in terms of thinking that the price of the product is part of the sales price. The price to make the product, the cost of making it, is part of the sales price. It has nothing to do with it. One has nothing to do with the other. The costs do not determine prices. Prices determine cost. Right? That's what I think. That was Hayek who said that. It was in that clip that I reference a lot. It's like the Keynesians can't understand even the most basic economics, what economics even is, right? If you just think about it in terms of just, if you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to sell widgets, what are you going to do first? You're not going to say, well, it cost me $100 to make a widget, so I'll sell these for 110, and then I'll have a 10% profit, I'll be rich. No, you say, what's the price of a widget in the economy? Oh, well, it's 50. Well, I have to figure out a way to produce it for 45, or I can't go into business. That's how you think about it, or else you're an idiot and you're going to go bankrupt. Okay, so if entrepreneurs thought like Keynesians, they'd all go bankrupt, which is probably why all Keynesians are, in the clouds, economists in the ether, just like in the evil ether. If I'm in the good ether, they're in like the ether of hell. And they don't understand how an economy works. So what could happen? How a port strike could make prices rise is that it would be indirect. It would be if these port workers are importing all these goods, and now it costs more to import the goods. Then what happens is the price of the goods stay the same, at least initially. And then the manager of the port says, "Well, I'm paying these guys too much, and I'm losing money because the prices of these goods are X, and now I have to pay my workers X plus two. So I'm going to have to let go some workers." So he lets go some workers. Now he has fewer workers, and now so he can pay those fewer workers those wages that they were demanding, right? And they're all happy, like, "Oh yeah, we got," like, he had to fire 10% of his workforce, but whatever, screw them. They can go, work at McDonald's, as Jordan Belfort said on Wolf of Wall Street.
Go get a job at fucking McDonald's, because that's where you belong.
Right, that was his line. So the 10% lose their jobs, and now he's paying these other guys the raise that he could afford. But now that he has fewer workers, they can import fewer goods because they can't do as much. And then you have fewer goods going into the ports and then going into the stores, and then the supply of goods and services goes down and the prices go up. Right. And then if you have, let's say, 90% of the workforce in the ports working, and now they say they want more of a raise because the prices of the goods and services that they're importing are going up because there's fewer workers at the port, and so they want more money. So they have to lay off even more workers, and you have even fewer goods and services. And then this keeps going until hyperinflation says nobody's working for anything anymore because it's not worth it. And so the economy just completely stops until you have a supply of gold and silver go in, and people can be paid, and things start over again. That's basically exactly what you're saying, but from a different angle of looking at it.
Yep, that's about right.
All
So
right.
we agree. I just wanted to let the viewer, if there's viewers like trying to understand what inflation is, it really is just printing notes for money you don't have. And, everything else that people are saying in inflation on TV, everywhere else, they're overthinking the problem dramatically. And, and there's no other solution than stop printing notes for money you don't have. Otherwise, you're going to get you're going to get inflation eventually.
Right. So also I wanted to add about the wage price spiral that Keynesians imagine exists. They think that it causes inflation, that it causes prices to rise. But what's happening is that the purchasing power of the dollar is falling for other reasons, right? And it's affecting the wages and the prices indirectly. So if you're trying to stop the wage price spiral, the prices of goods and services are going to keep going up. And then what's going to happen is that the people that if you're forcibly stopping the wage price spiral, then the people that are getting those wages, their wages are going to be worth less and less and less and less, even faster, and they're going to get even more pissed off. That's what's going to happen with the wage price spiral.
Working. If their wages are not allowed to increase, they're going to go on strike, and if it continues on, they'll just find something else to do. I mean,
yeah,
nobody works for free,
Right.
Now there's, I'm not a big fan of unions. I don't think they help the economy at all. I think it was Mises, but it might have been Hyatt. One of them said very basically, unions are bad. However, if you compare the damage a union does to what a banking cartel does, it's like holding a candle against the sun. Like, the unions are very minor compared to what the banking cartels are doing to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We wanted to talk now about Bill Clinton, right? So Daniel Oliver, there's one point of this article that I wanted to go into that I really didn't know what was happening, and I'm not sure that anyone really understood what was happening or how diabolical Bill Clinton really was, or how evil of a man I mean, you can see his whole family. It's basically a mafia, but it's a very slick mafia. Even now, I would say, like, put Bill Clinton back in the White House. He seemed to know what he was doing. Like, I have this general picture of him as a kid. I grew up in Dade County, Florida, among Jews who were liberals, and everybody voted for Bill Clinton. And I was shocked that Bush won Florida by 1%. I was like, how? I thought everyone was voting for Bill Clinton. My grandmother was like huge into Bill Clinton, this and that. We didn't know who the guy was, so Daniel Oliver was saying in Murmachan, I'll put a link in the description if you want to read this piece, that the Clintons were really the original sin of the Democratic Party, and he was able to say it in. I think I don't have a political mind. I can't really track politics as well as he can, but he did say one thing that stood out to me, that the housing and urban development guy, what's his title? Secretary. The secretary, the HUD secretary. Here they call it a minister. There they call it a secretary, whatever. So he was the one who was instructed to basically force Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to buy all of these mortgages that banks were just like spitting out into Fannie and Freddie, if they could just sell them the mortgages, and the bank didn't care who it was lending money to. Why would it care if you could just sell it to Fannie and Freddie, who were mandated by the HUD secretary to buy all this crap? And then I looked at the name of who was the Housing and Urban Development Secretary. It was Andrew Cuomo, the same POS bastard who was so into Schmovid and all of the and he even like had a ghostwriter write his autobiography. Was it autobiography? I think it was ghostwriting his autobiography into how amazingly he handled the pandemic, or I think it was called like Leadership, with a picture of Andrew Cuomo on the cover, and he totally destroyed what was left of New York. I mean, I didn't even know he was active in the 90s. I had no recollection of it. You know, I knew his father, Cuomo, was the mayor of New York or something. My father was a big fan of Mario Cuomo. I had no idea how destructive Andrew Cuomo was even back then.
Yeah, I mean, on the one sense, I do agree with a lot of this. However, because the monetary system is what it is, these people really, the people who get into power are the people willing to continue to manipulate the monetary system, or to ride the wave of the monetary system.
Do you think, I'm going to ask you this question. Do you think that Bill Clinton knew what he was doing, or do you think he was actually trying to make things better and he saw this as a way to increase prosperity? I mean, it's hard to tell.
I don't think anybody, based on my conversations with people that I try to explain these concepts to, very, very few people understand, that gold is money and they're doing it. They're running a Ponzi scheme over gold. So no, I don't think Bill Clinton thinks that deeply about the monetary system. So do I think he was trying to do good? I think he was trying to make himself popular. And if he can do that, on the public dime, I don't think he minds that at all.
Why did it take people or politicians so long to figure out that if you just force these government sponsored enterprises? I don't even know how Fannie and Freddie were founded, or why they even exist, or what brought them into being at all. Now I understand. This is my thought. I'm not sure if I'm right, but in the 70s and 80s, interest rates were just too high. And so you couldn't get people to take mortgages. So you couldn't get banks to sell them to Fannie and Freddie. It just wouldn't make sense. And it wouldn't have been able to go through the system. But once you have interest rates, once you have basically, like, look, when we went off the last vestiges of the gold standard, and the dollar became completely unlinked, at least officially, to gold, and only linked through coin shops, unofficially, then once the system was able to sort of get a hold of itself, sometime around the internet was when it really was able to, because of the increase in production. Then once interest rates are lower, then you can start messing around with Fannie and Freddie and filtering mortgages through them, and then having a huge housing bubble. But before then, it just wasn't possible.
The increase, both two things, it was the internet and the globalization. Both of those two things created a massive wave of productivity that allowed goofy things like massive Fannie and Freddie expansion to occur that would have blown up the system in a previous. Like if they had done that in 1978, it probably would have blown up everything.
Right.
I mean, globalization is the big, getting other countries to take our dollars, it massively expanded the amount of runway that we had on this thing.
Right. So then basically, I think what you're saying is we shouldn't think of it as like Bill Clinton is this super monetary evil genius that had this
No.
idea that if you can filter everything through Fannie and Freddie, you could create a huge housing boom, and then we could boom everything based on that. And I remember as a kid, people talking about how hot the 90s were. And I didn't realize how rich everything was. I see it now in retrospect. Like you go to the gas station, you fill up your tank for $10, and you can basically in the 90s that you could basically do anything. I mean, it's not like we had a mansion or anything, but we weren't worrying about bills. I wasn't worrying about if you're a moderately successful person, you're pretty comfortable. Taxes.
Ponzi's are wonderful things when you're in them. It's when they blow up that you have the problems, and towards the end, right? So if you think of the if you think of the 80s as that age of it was the real start of the fake prosperity boom, and everyone's very affluent. America becomes famous for, kind of affluence and, kind of faster living. And then the 90s was just the peak of that. We're just, the champagne cocktails and the endless success that's never going to go away. And then, of course, by the 2000s and the 2010s, we're starting to get pretty strong. I would say it's from 2000 to 2008, things are getting a little, the party's getting late into the evening. And from 2008 onwards, now it's 4 a.m. and, you got to do another line of Coke to keep the party going. And now it's 6 a.m. Now it's 6 a.m. and you're up to meth and you're on a meth high. That's why it's like really strong out. Champagne's long forgotten. Now we're up to meth.
Yeah, well, I hear about these meth parties. They can go on for like 2 or 3 days.
3 days, yeah.
These meth heads can stay awake for like 3 or 4 days and then just crash and sleep for a week or something like that.
Yes,
that's terrifying. That sounds really that's what society's about to go through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's about right, Rafi.
Yeah.
So no, Clinton's a product of it, not an architect. I mean, that's it. He's just a guy that was able to, ride off the largesse.
Mm-hmm.
Who was he running? Bob Dole, right? So Bob Dole was like, Bob Dole was not ready to return to gold and silver. If he had, maybe he could have gotten a little more traction. But he was like, I'm going to be I'm the boring, responsible, fiscally conservative. We're going to go back to a constitutional republic.
Fooling these Earth voters is easier than expected.
Yes, all they want to hear are bland pleasantries embellished by an occasional saxophone solo or infant kiss.
And Bill Clinton was, I'm here to help you, I feel your pain. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so, I mean, I do agree that he was not a good man, but he is not, he's another artifact of the inflationary system.
Yeah, he was just I think he was an accident of his time. And I think in that respect, Daniel Oliver might be wrong. It's not like this guy came in and changed everything, or that Bill Clinton is the original sin of the Democratic Party. Really, what the original sin of all of this is inflationary money. And Bill Clinton happened to come in at a time that for various historical reasons was able to trigger the biggest boom part of this monetary policy.
Yeah, he could look
given
great.
That the entire planet is taking dollars.
Yeah, he looked great doing it, and now everyone's like, well, why can't we do that anymore? Why is this not working anymore?
Yeah, so if the 90s was the 20s, right? Yeah. And let's say 1999, 2000, the dot-com explosion was 1929. Why did 1929 lead to such a Great Depression? Because we were still on a gold standard, which prevented further inflation at that point. Whereas at 2000, we're still on a fiat system, or, as people conceptualize it, a fiat system. So you can continue the inflation from 2000 into now. And then it just makes everything, it makes you feel like you're in a boom, but you realize that you're not. And it's a very awkward position.
Yes. It's a hell of a high, Meth.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to move on to the next one, if I may. So okay. I have a question for you. And you triggered something in my brain. You were talking about the LBMA and the COMEX. And you were talking about shorts, and you said shorts, I think this was you. You said shorts do not cause the price to go down because for every short, there's a long. And that triggered your brain, because I always thought, oh, they're shorting the market and that's causing the price to go down. But that's not true, because there's always somebody taking a bet. If I bet $100 million that the sun is going to rise in the east tomorrow, no one's going to take that bet. So I'm not going to realize that gain of $100 million, unfortunately. So... So my question is, how does the LBMA and the COMEX, if they are manipulating prices, how do they mechanically do it? What is the mechanism that works? And I have a thought, and I'm not, I don't know very much about the LBMA and the COMEX. I know that there's a lot of paper, gold, and silver out there, many, many, many more notes. And I have a theory. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. I have a theory that the note growth for those is following the same exponential growth curve that everything else is. So that if you look at it over a long period of time, and maybe you can demonstrate this, that the notes have increased exponentially, and that this is being used to suppress the dollar price of gold through the existence of paper gold. So the existence of large amounts of paper gold over the real gold that's available is causing the market to think there's a lot more gold than there actually is. And that is causing the dollar price of gold to be lower than it is. And that is, in fact, the suppression, not the shorting.
When we're talking about gold or silver manipulation, you can talk about it in terms of minute, annoying, illegal manipulation that you'll see a headline every now and then that JP Morgan got in trouble for spoofing and this and that. Basically what they're doing is they're putting a whole bunch of offers on the market and then taking them out before they get bitten, before they get somebody takes them.
Realized.
Right? So, yeah, where they get realized. And then it looks like someone's about to sell a whole bunch of gold. So then people frontline that those initial offers that never get filled, and then that causes the price to briefly, for a few minutes or hours or a day or two, go below where it was, so that JP Morgan can cover something and make a few bucks. I mean, okay, so that's annoying and it's illegal and it shouldn't be done, but it's really nothing in long term. It has nothing to do with the general suppression of the price.
So if I make a bet, so if I go into betting markets and I make a bet that the sun will not rise in the east tomorrow, that will affect the market for the sun rising in the east tomorrow, because, and even if I pull it out immediately, just put $100 million bet on the sun not rising in the east tomorrow, people go, hey, maybe the sun isn't going to rise in the east tomorrow. And that creates a certain amount of uncertainty, is what you're saying.
I think it's more algorithm based, actually.
So it's not, it's just, these are just computers. Okay.
It might have begun with trying to trick people and them looking at order flows or something, but I think it's mostly JP Morgan trying to get the algorithms messed up so that they can take advantage. And
Gotcha.
it's just a stupid game. So it's not the shorting itself that causes the price to go down. Because for every short seller is a buyer. I remember that line from Murray Rothbard in one of his books, like people blaming short sellers for stock crashes, which is ridiculous, because anytime anyone wants to short a stock, somebody's got to buy it, right? Or else you're not shorting it, right? So somebody's got to buy it. So that doesn't itself push the price down. But now if you are selling contracts and you know that whoever is buying the other side of the contract is not going to demand the physical, because why would they? They're not going to. So then that enables you to sell more and more, and then people will take that offer. And then it looks like there's more gold than actually exists, even though it's an open secret. It's like everybody knows that there's a lot more supply of paper gold than gold that exists. Everybody knows that, but still, imagine if everyone who sold a gold contract short has to have 100% backing of all the sales that he makes, right? Then once he runs out of physical, he can't sell any more contracts legally. You can't do that, right? And incidentally, on my Patreon, right, which you can join for as little as $3 a month, I went into a Mishnah, the earliest legal rabbinic compilation, that selling naked futures short is illegal. It's forbidden. You can't do it. It's an extension of the prohibition against interest, right? Because if you're selling a contract short for something that you don't have and the price goes up, then that's considered interest if you don't actually have the good to cover it. Right. So I didn't even know it was there. I was just at a class and he was doing this Mishnah and I was like, wow, that sounds like a naked futures contract. So because they don't have to have this stuff covered, they can keep selling. But if they know that they're running out of physical supply, then they're not going to take an offer, let's say, of gold for 100 ounces of gold for $2,600 or whatever it is. They're going to say, this is my last 100 ounces. If somebody wants it, they're going to have to pay me 5,000, right? Because I can't sell anymore after that.
No.
So the fact that it doesn't have to be covered is that's what's suppressing the price, because it's not like people think, oh my God, there's so much more gold than we thought, it must be cheaper. Well, if I just want the contracts to mess around with, then what does it matter? And then the jewelers, they're the ones hedging with these contracts, and then so they can sell gold jewelry based on that price. But we're not talking about the jewelry price. We're talking about the monetary price. The monetary price is when the dollar doesn't work and everybody needs gold now, every single person in the world. So the price is a lot different.
So I guess it does, the existence of the paper gold does affect the dollar price of the present gold. Then you would confer with that statement.
Yeah,
concur.
yeah, it does.
Okay. I think it's part of the Ponzi. Has it grown exponentially over time?
I don't know.
We'll have to look that up. You can squeeze the graph in, placeholder here.
I'll try to squeeze it in.
It must be increasing exponentially to keep the dollar price of gold from exploding. And it's obviously becoming less and less. They're having to generate, on top of the exponential price of dollars, or the exponential increase of the dollars to keep the things moving, they are having to increase exponentially the amount of gold contracts to keep the dollar price of gold from exploding. So they say, no, there's plenty of gold. Plenty of gold. See, look at all these notes for gold. There's plenty. Don't worry about it. So when that blows up, I think that's going to blow up as well. Maybe it may be a trigger of the end game. I don't know. There's a lot of possible different triggers, but I think that futures market for gold will blow up as well.
Just to clarify, it's not that I think, I can't speak for Philip. It's not that I think that there is this conspiracy of the modern day equivalent of the London gold pool. They're like, we have to keep gold suppressed because otherwise the dollar will fall and then we won't have a monetary system. Nobody understands how it works, not even the people on the top. But what they're seeing is that there's more and more demand for paper gold, and so they're like, okay, we'll sell it. Okay, whatever. And then it's just like Bill Clinton comes in, he's like, ooh, I have this idea that I'm going to push mortgages through Fannie and Freddie and create this huge, massive global dollar bubble, and then I'll be the most popular president. No, he wasn't thinking about it. He was like, hey, here's a way to make money. And then he just did it. Okay.
And I want to finish up on what the Torah and Talmud say on debt defaults.
Okay.
So obviously this is going to be a big issue because a lot of people are not going to be able to pay their debts, or they're going to be paying them off nominally. But let's say I owe $400,000 on a house right now, and the currency dies in a few weeks, and I just pay it off with monopoly money. Is that okay? Have I done a moral disservice because I have taken out money that became disvalued? I took out a loan and money became devalued.
So actually, okay. First of all, like a big disclaimer here. I am not a Talmudic scholar. I'm not even close. Okay. Yeah, you have to learn this stuff for decades. And it's more complicated than you could possibly imagine. What I know, in terms of Talmudic law, is that, and I don't think modern day rabbis deal with this subject at all, and that upsets me, because I go to a synagogue for afternoon prayers. That's right by my house, and we're learning the middle gate, Bava Metzia, which is about monetary law, and everyone uses the example of a shekel when they're talking about a case, like, oh, someone lends 100 shekels to somebody demands 110 shekels back. That's considered interest, and you can't do interest. And then I'm thinking, like, but the shekel is not money. The money, according to Bava Metzia, chapter 4, it's in the first mission of chapter 4 of Bava Metzia. The money is silver. Right? Everything else is a commodity. So if, for example, if you're loaning 100 shekels to somebody in shekels, like I give you a 100 shekel bill, and then the rate of inflation is 5%, 10%, whatever, then I should pay you back 110 shekels, and it shouldn't be interest because it's not silver.
Yeah.
And I think there's a term for this. I think it's called Drar de Mamona. That might be the term for inflation, but it might not be, because there's no concept of inflation of the money supply in Talmudic law. It's not something that exists because money was actually money back then. People didn't, there's a concept of like fake bills and fake and like I can write you a bill that I owe you this amount of money, and then I don't pay it. But if I don't pay it, the bill is worthless. Like there's debt, right? There's debt contracts, but people weren't using that as money. So I don't. The thing is, like, because we've been in exile for so long and we don't have our legal system, even the state of Israel, it's not a Torah legal system, not even close to it. Then what's going to happen when the Israeli government collapses, and then we're going to have rabbinic law take into account, actual monetary law and a monetary system. Can you even use these things? Can you use a shekel? I don't think you can. I think it's usher. But, no one's going to listen to me.
So let me ask you this. In America is fairly forgiving of debt, maybe much more than, countries have been in the past. I mean, in the past, your son could be liable for any loans you take out, or even your grandchildren, right? It's like there's like a family debt almost. But in America, you could just say, well, can't pay back. Sorry. And they can try and take some of your assets, but that's really about it. And then you're free and clear. I mean, you have a bad credit score, but you're free and clear.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing, I'm asking, is the Torah or Talmud or whatever your sources, are they different? Are you required, like if you take a debt that you cannot pay back, are you required to, till his land for him for certain period of time?
Into slavery. You go into slavery. Every 7 years debts are canceled anyway. So you're not going to be a slave for more than 7 years unless you decide that you want to. It's right after the it's the beginning of Parshat Mishpatim. Forgot which chapter. In the 20s in Exodus. It's like the first law after the Ten Commandments that's in the portion of the Ten Commandments is that if a Jewish slave, if he goes free after 7 years, but if he doesn't want to go free, then he's got to get his ear pierced on the lintel of the door, and then he's a slave forever. Even forever isn't forever. Forever is until the Jubilee year, and then that's it. You can't keep the slaves. So there is voluntary slavery if a debt can't be paid, which makes sense. We're not talking about like whipping and having somebody pull a plow or something. We're talking about doing labor and getting room and board and paying your debt off monetarily for that. That makes sense. It makes sense even now instead of a debt.
It's a bondsman. Yeah, medieval England had the similar concept of the bondsman, where you owed a debt, so you had to pay it off in labor because you messed up and you can't pay it back monetarily or with whatever the contract was. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's because I'm an American. I like the American system because it's just like, well, you should not have loaned them the money. If they don't have a reputation of being able to pay it back, you should not have loaned it to them. Now, of course, the inflationary system being what it is, people are like, yeah, sure, I'll give you a loan, see if it works out. We'll see what happens. But the American system, I think, under a much more sober monetary standard should I think, still hold up very well. And I'm very much again. I'm okay with individual servitude. Of course, then if the guy has a family, his family has to come in and live in your house and stuff too. And now you're talking generational slavery, which I don't know.
Well, that's why you have debt resets, every 7 years. But if you don't want the slave, you can just put him on the slave market and sell him to a plantation or somebody who could use the free labor for the monetary value of that slave. And then you get the money. Then you sell the slave to there'd be markets developed for this, like a slave trade. But a nice legitimate slave trade where people are treated like humans, and there's all bunch of regulations. You can't hit them. If you blind your slave, he goes free. If you knock his teeth out, he goes free. You can't just they're still people. They just owe money.
Yeah. All right. Well, Rafi, I think that concludes our episode.
All right. Cool.
I did want to say this decent chance this is our last episode. If it is, I want to thank you very, very much for everything you have done. You certainly changed the trajectory of my life and my family's life, and you've saved probably uncountable numbers of people. I mean, I myself have, spread the message like Johnny Appleseed and have saved a lot of people, I hope. And so thank you for everything you've done, Rafi. And if it's not the last one,
I don't think
then
it's
we'll
our
see.
last episode. You're saying that the end game's going to hit by next month? I don't know.
I don't know. You tell me.
Wouldn't be so morbid. Okay, because that can be interpreted as like, you're in northern Israel, Rafi. I think you're going to get overrun by Hezbollah next month. That makes me kind of uncomfortable.
Oh no, I didn't mean that. I was thinking dollar.
Okay. Okay.
I wasn't like, oh geez, nice knowing you, Rafi.
Yeah, well, with like bombs flying over my house all the time, that's pretty much what I'm thinking about more than the end game these days. End game is comforting for me. Being bombed, not so much.
Yeah. Well, just in case, I wanted to publicly say thank you for everything you've done, and your show is wonderful.
Oh, so is yours. I watch it all the time.
Yeah. Mutual Admiration Society.
Okay.